Hi, and welcome back. So let's start with the Competing Values Framework. The Competing Values Framework was created by Cameron and Quinn from the University of Michigan. I will share some links at the bottom of this video where you can deep dive more into that specific framework and the work that those two researchers and others have done. The framework itself is fairly simple. As usual, we have two axes. On the first axis, being the horizontal one, we have basically the two dimensions, one being organizations that are more status quo and internal focused versus organizations that are more market and external focused. On the other axis, the vertical one, we have to distinguish between organizations that are more process and systems oriented compared to organizations that are more oriented towards individuals and their interactions. Based on these two axes and the different dimensions, we end up with 4 different quadrants. At the bottom left, organizations that are very much status quo and internal focused, and also systems and process focused, are the so-called control organizations. Most organizations that are large, and a lot of those organizations that are in highly regulated environments, tend to be in that specific sector. You can think about banks, insurances, big automotive or pharmaceutical organizations. Most of them tend to have a control culture. And we will explore what that control culture looks like a bit later. At the top right, which is the competing value, we have the create culture. These are organizations that tend to focus externally and on the market, but also focus on the individuals and not so much on systems and processes. Organizations like Google, organizations like Amazon, but also many smaller organizations, including most startups, tend to be in that create culture. Let's move on to the next culture. At the bottom right, we have the compete culture, which are organizations that do have an external focus, that do look at the marketplace, but still value systems and processes a ton. Most large consulting organizations like McKinsey, BCG, or Bain are in the compete quadrant. They have internal values like up or out, or grow or go. And seldomly, actually never, do you see them collaborate to deliver value to their customers. The final culture is the collaborate culture at the top left. These organizations are very much internal and status quo focused. At the same time, they do value the individuals and the interactions between those. The collaborate and the compete culture are actually competing with each other. Looking at examples for the collaborate culture, the vast majority of family-run businesses tend to be in that specific quadrant and have that specific culture. So this is the Competing Values Framework with the different quadrants and a few examples of what type of organizations are in each of those cultures. In our next video, I will quickly introduce an exercise which you can do individually before we debrief it together. See you there.